Hi, I'm Craig Murphy. Today we're going to talk about how you can make a complaint about sexual harassment, a hostile work environment, or other illegal discrimination at work, and to prevent you being retaliated against for making that complaint. Stay tuned. This is going to be a good one. Welcome to today's session of Murphy's Law School. Today what we're going to be talking about is how to complain about sexual harassment or a hostile work environment or some other illegal discrimination at your workplace, and how to make that complaint in such a manner that you do not get retaliated against. We're going to go through a lot of information today, so you may want to get a notepad and a pen and take some notes, because we're going to go through a lot of stuff, and it's going to be very important for you to know this if you're in this type of situation. So grab a pen and paper. Class is now in session. Now, before we get started, what we have to do is the first thing that we got to look at is, what is it that you want to get out of your complaint? Before you start making a complaint to your employer, you have to think to yourself, what is it that you want to accomplish? What do you want to get out of making this complaint to your employer? Because you have to know what you want in order to get what you want. So think that through, because your ultimate goal is to accomplish what it is that you want to get. And in figuring it out, there are a few assumptions that we're going to make. Number one, the first assumption, of course, is that you have a job. Obviously, you would not be making a complaint and worrying about getting retaliated against if you had already been terminated or the situation was so bad that you had to quit. So we're going to assume first and foremost that you have a job. Number two, that you want to keep your job. I mean, obviously, the purpose of this is so that you can make your complaint and make your job better, so that it's bearable, so that you are not being subjected to a bunch of illegal behavior or a bunch of harassment or whatever your circumstances are. So again, we are going to conclude that you have a job, that you want to keep your job, and that you want something to stop or that you want something to change. Again, what you need to do is think it through and figure out exactly what it is that you want to stop or that you want to change. The next thing you need to figure out is, for that change to come about, how do you want it to come about? Do you want to get transferred? Do you want to be sent to a different shift? Do you want to go to work under a different manager? Or do you want somebody else to be transferred? Somebody else to be put on a different shift? Somebody else to go work for a different manager? Or do you want the management to come in and take a look at the situation and stop whatever it is that's going on? You need to figure out what it is that you want to accomplish. And then the next assumption that we're going to make is that you want to do this in a manner so that when you do it, you accomplish your goal, but you are not retaliated against. You do not want to make this complaint, bring it to the management, and then find out that you are now in a much worse situation than you were in the beginning. And the next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that if you make this complaint and the situation gets worse, or that you get terminated, or if something happens and you find that you end up in a lawsuit, you want to make sure that your complaint helps you and doesn't hurt you. So you need to make your complaint in a certain type of manner so that, number one, hopefully it will bring the harassment or the hostile work environment or whatever the illegal situation that you're subjected to an end. And by doing that, you will not then be put in a worse position because you're now being retaliated against. So let's get into this and go through all of this and see how you can do it to improve your situation. When you're thinking about making a complaint like this, one of the first things that you have to do, and this is going to be one of the hardest things that you have to do, is look at yourself. Why do I say that? Look at yourself as an employee. What type of employee are you? Let's be honest about this. Are you an MVP? Are you a very valuable or most valuable employee, an MVP? Or are you a whiner? Are you someone that's always complaining? The fact of the matter is, no one likes a whiner. And if your case ends up in front of a jury and the jury thinks that you're nothing but a whiner, you're not going to win your case. Also, if your employer and your co-employees think of you as nothing but a whiner, I don't know if they're going to take your complaint seriously. So look at yourself and do what you can to make sure that you are the best employee possible. Because let's be honest about this. When an employer is going to look at two employees and figure out who is right, who is wrong, who do they want to protect, who do they want to support, they are going to choose their most valuable employee over someone that they think is just a whiner or a complainer. Also, look at yourself and ask yourself, are you a person at work who goes the extra mile? Or are you a person where if something comes up and someone says something to you and your attitude is, that's not my job? If you're a that's not my job type of person, then again, making this complaint might not be the best way for you to get this resolved. What you have to do, again, look at yourself and make sure that you've put yourself in the best position that you can so that your employer wants to support you as opposed to the other person. And also, what is your track record? Is your track record one of exceptional reviews and very good performance ratings? Or is it, not so good? Because, again, if your employer doesn't do what you want your employer to do, doesn't get your back, doesn't support you, does not take care of the sexual harassment or the hostile work environment or the other illegal discrimination that you think that you're being subjected to, and they take the other person's side, why is that? And it could be because you don't have such a good track record, and maybe what you want to do is work on your job performance. Or maybe you might want to decide that this job really isn't for you. So those are some of the things that you got to think about. And you got to look at yourself long and hard to decide if that is in fact who you are, if you're the best employee or not, if this is the best job for you or not. Is it worth it for you to make this complaint or not? And once you go through that analysis, then you go to the next step. The next step is you have to do your homework. And what do I mean by that? Number one, you got to review your employee manual, your employee handbook, the policies and procedures. You need to know what your employer says that you are supposed to do in a circumstance like this. So review your employee manuals and handbooks and other policies and procedures to see what your company specifically tells you that you need to do. Number two, you need to know what your chain of command is, and you have to follow it. What do I mean by that? If you have a co-employee that is subjecting you to what you believe is the illegal working environment, then you probably are supposed to go to your direct manager. If your manager doesn't step in and do what he or she is supposed to do, then who do you go to next? Do you go to the HR department? Is there someone above the HR department? What you don't want to do is break the chain of command where you're supposed to go to your manager, but no, you jump up and don't even go to HR, you go to the owner of the company. What you need to do is find out what the chain of command is and follow it. There's a number of reasons for that. Number one, if you jump over your boss's head and go above them, they are going to be bent out of shape that number one, you didn't come to them and that you're making them look bad in front of the boss. So follow the chain of command. Again, do your homework, find out what you're supposed to do, and follow it up. Now, if you don't get a effective response from your immediate supervisor or your manager, then again, look in your employee manual and see if you go to HR. If HR doesn't do what you want, who do you go to after that? If no one comes to your rescue and takes care of this situation, then again, that's when you come over and you look at the potential of filing a lawsuit. Do you need to get legal help, legal assistance at that time? But what you have to do is make sure that you go up the proper chain of command. And the reason that you do that is so that number one, no one is left out of the loop and you don't give any defenses to management or the company that you didn't follow the policies and procedures and that they didn't know. And that brings us to the next thing. What you want to do is not what you want to do. What you have to do is you have to put your complaint in writing. You want to make sure that you document what you have done so that there is a record of it in the event that this goes beyond the workplace, that you have to file a lawsuit or take some other action, make a complaint with the EEOC or some other administrative board. You want to make sure that you have everything is in writing. When you make your complaint, when you give your written notice to your employer pursuant to the policies and procedures set forth in your handbook, here is what you want to do in your written notice. Number one, you want to have the proper tone. It's been said that attitude is a small thing that makes a big difference. So what do I mean by that? You don't want to go in and start just make this letter what I call a flamer. You don't want to send this in and you are just venting and raging against not only a co-employee or a manager, you're venting against the whole company. That doesn't do you any good. What you want to do is you want this to be a very professional letter. What you want to do is approach the management or the HR department in a way that says, I am in this situation. I am reaching out to you to give me some assistance in this pursuant to the policies and procedures that is in our handbook. So you don't want to go out there and just throw gasoline all over a fire. What you want to do is you want to take the approach that you're seeking their help and that they have policies and procedures in there that as long as you follow them, you expect them also to follow them and to come and support you and rescue you from this situation. So you need to be professional in the manner in which you write it. You don't want to be accusatory. You don't want to be angry. You want it to also seek to be helpful and solution-oriented. Now, what do I mean by that? Again, you don't want to throw a bunch of gasoline on a fire. Instead, you want to say to them, I am in this situation, and you do not think that it is proper, and you want to do something to help them so that they can avoid future problems. In other words, let's take a situation. You can say to them, you can do it one of two ways. You write a letter and saying, Joe in such and such a department is sexually harassing me and I expect you we have a no tolerance policy and I want you to do something about it. And that's the tone that you take. Or you can take the tone and say, Joe in such and such a department asked me out and I said no. And since that time, I have been very uncomfortable in the manner in which he is treating me, and pursuant to our policies and procedures, I would ask that you look into this because I am very uncomfortable. So what you've done is you've pointed out a specific situation, and you have gone to them and you've asked them to give you some help. You haven't gone in and been accusatory. You've said what the situation is, and you're asking them for help. So what you're doing is saying you've got a situation, you're trying to be helpful, and you're giving them a solution. Again, you don't want it to be threatening. The other thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to have a bunch of legal conclusions and legal sounding words in there, because those don't do you any good. If you write a letter and you say, I am being subjected to a hostile work environment and I'm going to sue if you don't take care of it. Well, number one, the word hostile work environment is a legal term, and that term has a legal meaning and a legal definition and a number of things that must be met for it to actually be a hostile work environment. And you could be working for a jerk. It may be hostile, but it may not be illegal. You have to know what actually makes an environment at work illegal. It doesn't do you any good to say, this is a hostile work environment and I want you to do about it. What you have to do, as we said before, is, say what the situation is, what has resulted, and offer some type of solution to it or ask for help. Again, the solution could be, we might want to, I would like you to look into this, as this could affect the performance of our team or the ability of our company to meet its goals, whatever it is, and ask them to come in to your assistance. But what you don't want to do is use a bunch of legal jargon and make it threatening. Again, you want to try and be helpful, you want to be professional, and you are seeking their input and for them to follow their policies and procedures that are set forth in their employee manual. So if you do it in that manner, you really reduce the chances that you're going to be retaliated against. Because again, if you go in there and you're spreading gasoline all over a fire, they're automatically going to get a reaction and not necessarily want to be supporting to you. But if you go in there in a professional, calm manner and ask them to follow the policies and procedures and to give you some help with a specific situation, it may be much easier for them to work out a solution that will be to your liking and to your benefit. So keep those in mind when you're making your written notice, and make sure that you keep copies of everything. When you make your written complaint, you also want to be very specific about what your complaint is about. And what I mean by this is you want to have one issue or problem, not a laundry list. Hopefully you haven't been holding everything back and saving every grievance that you have against this person or the company, and you all of a sudden want to just open up the floodgates and get everything out. That really is not going to be to your benefit, and it makes it very difficult for the company to come in and say, what are we going to do to resolve this situation? And again, it brings us back to, what is it that you want and what do you want to accomplish? What you want to accomplish and what you should be trying to do is to take care of one issue and one issue only. It doesn't do you any good to make a laundry list and have 10 different things that you're complaining about. Now, it may be one specific thing that is going on. It could be the sexual harassment. There may have been 3 or 4 or 5 different incidents of it, but the one thing that you're complaining about is sexual harassment. Or it could be it's a hostile work environment, and there may be 1, 2, 3, or 4 different instances that you can give to the company to be very specific to them. But you don't want to be all over the map with complaints about everything and everybody. If you do that, it's not really going to do you any good, and it's going to be very hard for the company to come in and do anything to benefit you. You should also have something in there that it is something that can actually be changed or fixed. Again, if you just have a bunch of complaints and all you're doing is complaining, and again, you're being a whiner, that is not going to benefit you. What you want to do is you want to have something that the company can change or fix. If you're being unfairly treated or you're being sexually harassed by somebody, the company can move you to a different department. They can put you on a different shift. They can move that person. If it's so egregious and the employee manual says that there's no tolerance policy at your work, the employer can fire the other person. So there is something that they can do specifically to take care of this situation and change it or fix it. And you might want to point that out, again, specifically citing to the parts of the employee manual or policies and procedures that go along with that. And specifically say what is illegal or unlawful behavior. And again, this goes back to over here where I say no legal conclusions or legal sounding words, just the facts. You don't want to say that the behavior is outrageous and that you are offended and all a bunch of words that describe it. What you want to do is you want to say what the facts are. Sort of like I said earlier. Joe asked me out on a date. I didn't feel comfortable about that, or I didn't want to go out on the date, but I didn't want to hurt his feelings, and I just said no. And I was hoping that we would be able to continue working. But after I said no, this has started to occur, and he has said these things or he has done these things. Just the facts. Do not make legal conclusions. Do not put a bunch of gasoline on a fire. Just the facts, ma'am, just like Joe Friday on the old television show. Also, this goes right along with this. What you want to do is you want to seek help. You just don't want to make allegations and complaints. Again, what you're trying to do is you're getting the company or management to come in and support you and do something to change or fix the problem. And if you can offer a solution, try and be helpful, that could be very positive for you. But you just don't want to make a bunch of complaints and say, you do something about it. That is not helpful. So this is what we want to do when you make your written notice, is you want to make sure that it's the proper tone and that it is very specific. You do not want it to be something that is inflammatory, has a bunch of legal jargon in it, or has a bunch of conclusory statements. What you want it to do is you want it to be fact specific, and you want it to be professional, and you want it to be reaching out to them for their assistance and their help so that they comply with their policies and procedures and take care of this unwanted situation for you. And if this is the manner in which you make your written notice to them, it will be something that will hopefully help change the situation. And if it doesn't accomplish the goals, it will be something that when it comes later where a lawsuit becomes necessary, that this may be something that is helpful to you, because you will show to a panel, to a jury of independent people, that you were really reaching out to the company for some help and support, and that their employee manual said that they would give that to you. And when you relied on that and you went to them with this, they let you down. They didn't do what they said they would do. And that is how you make a written complaint that you will not get retaliated against, or at least reduces the chances that you will be retaliated against. Also, when you make your written complaint, you want to make sure, as we discussed earlier, that you follow the proper chain of command, that you follow the policies and procedures that are set forth in your employee manual or your company handbook. Take it up the chain of command if necessary. What this does, when you follow the chain of command, it cuts off the no notice excuse. Again, what happens in many of these situations is that someone will make a complaint and the management will come in and say, well, we never knew about it. If we had been informed of this, if the proper people in the HR department or in management knew about this, certainly we would have stepped in. We would have followed our policies and procedures. We would have taken care of this situation, but we were never given the opportunity to do that. So that is why, again, when I said earlier and why we have this here now, is that you need to follow your chain of command and follow the policies and procedures, is because that takes that defense away from them. Because you will say, look, I have this in writing. I went to my manager. When my manager did not respond to me or told me that I needed to work it out with the other person and it didn't work out, and I went to HR said, this is not our problem. You need to deal with it. You have it in writing. You can show that you did what you were required to do under the company's own policies and procedures or employee manual, and they're the ones that dropped the ball on this, that they're the ones that didn't do what they were supposed to do. Even though they will try and blame it on you or say that you are at fault somehow, you have got it in writing that not only did you present it to them, you asked them for their help, and they didn't come to your help. They didn't give you the support. They didn't do what their policies and procedures said that they would do. Also, look at this situation. I put this as, are you a frequent flyer? Why do I put that in there? If you are a person that they view as someone who complains all of the time, that, as I said earlier, nobody likes a whiner. If you're going to them with complaints, or you give them this laundry list of things with a bunch of things that are not important, but there's one important thing in there, then they're going to say, well, here we go again. It's a whole list of stuff. So don't be one of the people that is always making complaints, because if something serious comes up, it's like the boy who cried wolf. There's always complaints. And then when you come with something serious, they're going to treat it the same way as they treated everything else that's not important. So you have to decide if this is something that is worth approaching management with, and it's in writing, and that you really expect them to come back to you and support you. So as you go about your daily business, don't be the person who's the whiner and the complainer all the time. It's not always that the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Go back and look at what we said earlier, where you want to be the most valuable employee. You want to be the one that goes the extra mile. You don't want to be the person that says, that ain't my job, because you don't get any respect with that. So make sure that you are in the best position that if the situation arises, that the company is going to want to support you. Number 5, liar, liar, pants on fire. We've all heard that saying. What does it mean? Well, it simply means this. If you get into a lawsuit, or you make an EEOC complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission about your company, they're going to lie. That's right, they're going to lie. The people that work there, your management, they are going to lie. They lie all of the time. And that is why it is so important that you get everything in writing. Anything that you do, you should send it in an email. And that way you get a response. And you need to print off and keep copies of every one of the emails, because that is going to be your evidence. You have to preserve your evidence. If you think, well, Joe or Jane will support me, they saw this harassment that I was being subjected to, well, when they get asked questions, here's what's going to go through their mind. Am I going to support you, or am I going to do what's necessary to keep my job? I have to feed my family. I am not going to put the security of my job and my future and my family on the line over this, and they will say they either don't know about it or they didn't see it, or they will outright lie on behalf of the company. The HR department and the management, if they are faced with a lawsuit like this, they often lie. It is shocking how many times you will see what they put on writing and what they come in and they say. And if you don't have it in writing and you don't save everything and you don't print it all off, it's going to be their word against yours. And that is not a good situation. What you want to do is you want to have firm evidence, tangible evidence. So what you do is you send everything by email, you print it. When you get a response by email, you print it. You want to save everything. If it's something that's a text or something that for some reason you can't save it or you can't print it, take a screenshot of it on your computer and print the screenshot. If you can't do that, get your phone out and take your phone and take a picture of it with your phone. Somehow you have to preserve it. And what you have to do is you have to preserve everything so that it is complete. You just don't want the little highlights that support you and then the other parts you take out. If you've taken bits and pieces of it, they're going to argue that you've taken it out of context, that you're trying to mislead either the EEOC or the jury. You want to make sure that everything that you have is complete. If you follow these steps, hopefully you're not going to be in a situation where you have to make an EEOC complaint. Hopefully you have presented a situation to the HR department or your manager or your boss, and they are going to come to you respectfully and say, this is a situation that obviously needs to be taken care of, and that they're going to take care of it for you. And again, that could be transferring somebody, putting somebody on a different shift, whether it's you, whether it's the other person. And I always think, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but if the other person is in the wrong, you shouldn't be the person who's being transferred or given a different shift. It should be the other person. But maybe you would prefer being in a different location. You would prefer the transfer. You would prefer being on a different shift. Again, go back to the beginning and think what your goals are and what solutions you can offer to your company so that if they take the actions that you want, it is something that is going to be to your satisfaction. It will be of benefit to the company, and the company will be able to go on with its business and achieve its goals. So I hope that you have found this to be of use and informative. If you have any questions, what I want you to know, number one, is this is general information. This is not to be taken as legal advice. You and I do not have an attorney-client relationship. The only way that we can do that is if you call me and I decide to take your case and represent you. So if you have questions about this and you feel that I have earned the honor of representing you or you want to talk to me, feel free to give me a call. Also, if you think that this has been helpful and of benefit to you and has given you good information, it would be nice if you would like this. Give it a thumbs up, a like. I would appreciate that. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Share this with other people. Spread the news. I am going to have a lot of information. I already have a lot of information on my website. It is useful information to people and it's out there. Share it with them. And do me the favor of going and giving me a Google or a Yelp review. I'm trying to be helpful and reach as many people as I can. So if this has been of benefit to you, it has helped you and given you some information that you can use, then give me a like, give me a review, and other people might be able to see it and be helped also. And if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call.